This is episode number 68, part 2 of the true story of Jason Wang. Hello everyone, I'm Julian Placino, and welcome to the Pathways to Success podcast, where I interview experts on leadership, personal development, business, health and fitness, and many other topics to help you find your unique pathway to success. Having a deep recruiting background, I leverage my ability to attract top performers and conduct in-depth interviews to uncover the secrets to success from a highly diverse group of experts, then share these lessons to help you find your unique pathway to success. Thanks for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you soon on the Pathways to Success. This episode is brought to you by CompeteEveryday.com, a global lifestyle brand that provides competitors everywhere the positive motivation to take on their greatest obstacles and compete for their life. Now, this is a very unique sponsor because when you look at their products, they're kind of this perfect blend of motivational messaging and high-quality fitness and lifestyle apparel. So they have t-shirts, hoodies, joggers, tank tops, shorts for men and women that display inspiring messaging like be a difference maker, beat yesterday, raise the bar, end on empty. And my personal favorite, compete hard, dig deep, kick ass, repeat. And there's even some funny ones like their Do Not Judge Me tee, where the O is in the shape of a donut. Because Jake Thompson, the owner of Compete, has a fascination with donuts. So there's something here for everyone. I highly encourage you to check them out. I'm going to spell this out for you. That's CompeteEveryday.com, CompeteEveryday.com. And if you use the code Julian, that's Julian, my name, you get 10% off your order. So make sure to check them out at CompeteEveryday.com today. What's happening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Pathways to Success podcast and joining us for part 2 of the true story of Jason Wang. So if you missed last week's episode, we talked about Jason's upbringing, his abusive upbringing, and really some of the factors that contributed to him behaving this way that ultimately landed him in prison. We talked about robberies and burglaries, the sentencing process, checking into prison, and this week we're picking up into him checking into the long-term placement facility. And for the conclusion of this episode, we're going to talk about his experience in prison, the initiation process, him getting into fights, the role his mother played in his transformation, and ultimately how he became the success he is today, even though he went through these series of circumstances. So it's an incredibly inspiring story. Please share this out with everyone that you know. So if you did miss last week's episode, make sure to check that out, episode number 67. And here we go, on to the interview.
So then you go to your long-term placement facility. And it's crazy because at the facility, there's an orientation dorm, right? So you go from orientation to another orientation dorm on the long-term facility that you're going to be staying at. Now, at the orientation dorm, like, it operates very much like Army recruiting or college recruiting or whatever it is. Because as soon as you get there, the long-term facility was run by 3 main groups. It was the Thresses, 13, right? So that's a gang. You have the Bloods, you have the Crips, and then you have subsects. So you had Perus, Disciples, Norteños. So this is in South Texas. So if you're a Norteño, like, you would have to immediately convert. Otherwise, you'd get beat up the rest of your time there. Wow. Because there were a lot of Sureños on there. So they didn't get along. But like, so you've got these 3 major gangs that basically control the facility. The facility that I was at, there were about 50% Bloods. And the Crips and the Thresses had teamed up because they were both under blue flag.
What's that?
So basically, each gang uses like a color to. It's kind of like the United States flag, right? So like it's like their symbol, pride, or whatever. Like, sure. It's their way of identifying each other, right? We don't have the actual bandanas, which would be considered the flag inside prison, but that's their color, right? So the Thresses and the Crips were both blue flag. The Bloods were red flag. And they had a war on campus for control. So it's also very political. Oh my God. Right? So you get into this long-term placement facility, and you go into this orientation dorm, and immediately, like, they actually scheduled this out, man, where for every new inmate that comes to the facility, the gang leaders on campus already know all of your personal information before you even make it to the facility. So they know what your name is, where you're from, what your gang is, what crime you committed, how much time you got, everything. So they already know that information, right?
From the guards? From what?
Like prison is faster than Twitter. Like information travels faster than Twitter in prison.
Wow.
So sometimes, like if you're being transferred from another facility, somebody will send you a letter that says, "Hey, watch out. This dude's coming in. He's a blood. He's from Corpus Christi. He committed aggravated robbery. Got 12." Like they would give him the rundown, right? Or there's a lot of the gangs inside. Their families are part of the gang as well, and so they might know about somebody who just committed a crime that's going through the system, and they'll tell a family member that will tell a person that's inside prison and say, "Hey, he's coming in, take care of him," right? So like so information travels in a lot of different ways.
Wow.
So as soon as you get down, you have the 3 gangs, and just depending on how they operate it, like usually they send about 1 or 2 representatives over, right?
Representatives.
Right, representatives, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
You come in with a garbage bag full of your clothes, your blanket, your shoes, like whatever it is, right? You come in with a garbage bag, and this is an open bay dorm. So this is a huge room with 24 bunks, right? And and they have a locker underneath the bunk, and so that's where you go store your stuff. So as soon as you hit the dorm, go to your locker, they send people over to you. Now, it could be one of 3 things. They go there to welcome you, because you're already part of the gang. You're already part of the set or whatever the deal is. And so they're there to welcome you. They're there to put you down. So that means that, hey, you just came in, you have blood, you about to be a Crip today. You know what I'm saying? Like it, we ain't gonna be, like, it's, you gonna get down with us whether you like it or not, right? Or they go there to test you. So for the most part, if you're a very small white person, like that's usually where you get tested. So you come in and they immediately either start messing with you or they try to take your stuff to see whether or not you'll fight them.
Yeah.
And if you don't fight back, then it shows that you're going to be a punk and they can punk you for the rest of your stay there. Right? So I get down to the facility and I don't have a gang affiliation. Right, because I'm not part of the Bloods, Crips, Thresses, nothing like that.
And is it all race related?
It's usually, in the adult prison system, usually it's race related. So the blacks go with the blacks, Mexicans, whites with the white, stuff like that. In juvenile, it is still race related, but it is much more categorized by like street gangs or by like major gangs. So you could be a white guy in the Bloods or Crips, right? Which in the adult system normally wouldn't happen, right? Or a black guy. Well, you wouldn't have a black guy in the Aryan Brotherhood. Well, but you know what I mean.
Where do the Asians go?
Well, that's the thing. So when I get to that facility, I'm the first Chinese dude there in 10 years.
Really?
Asians don't get locked up, bro. Like, dude, the entire time I was there, I met one other Vietnamese kid.
Yeah.
And this is with a population of like 5,000-6,000 inmates. Like, we don't get locked up, man.
Oh my gosh.
And dude, like when we get locked up, it's oftentimes for like something really serious.
Yeah.
Like we're not going in there for truancy. Like the other Vietnamese kid that I saw, like he shot his uncle. Like, yeah. So I go in there and I'm Asian, right? So I don't have a race to back me up. I'm not affiliated with any gang, and people aren't quite sure how to approach me. Right?
They said all the representatives over there. What you want to do with this one?
Right? Because I mean, in a lot of these guys, their backgrounds and stuff, like the neighborhoods that they grew up in, like they don't. It's all the same race, right? So there's just not a whole lot of Asians, right? So I go in there, and it's tough for the first week or so. They go over there, they test you. I'm young at the time. I was like working out, I was ripped. And so I had to get into a couple of fights, right? So you fight a couple of times, and then if you show enough resistance, then people will say, you know what? I could try to take his stuff, but I'm going to catch so much hell for it. This guy isn't going to give me as much hell. So I'm going to leave him alone and take this guy's stuff instead, right? Because, I mean, the facility has hundreds of inmates, right? So that was the first portion of it. So it's kind of proving yourself in order to get the respect on the dorm. And I think that over time, and this is really, this is a different experience that, like, because I talk about this frequently, right? what I started to learn was that by using intelligence, you can further gain respect from the other inmates in the dorm. And what I mean by that is this. So when I go into prison, at the time, I get locked up in 10th grade. I wasn't a dumb kid. I was just skipping school a lot. And so what would happen was that I was getting low grades. I was failing out of classes and stuff like that. But it wasn't because I was dumb. It's because I didn't apply myself. So as I was going through the whole prison experience, like, dude, I got bored. Right? Like, you have nothing to do all day, right? And there are, like, riots, like, every other day. You've got kids trying to stab guards. People are getting raped in the broom closet. Like, dude, you just want to get away, man. Right?
Yeah.
And so what I did, I read a lot of books. And what was amazing was that my mom, she would send me these huge packets of mail. And I remember for the first couple of weeks when I was getting these packets of mail, like, I thought it was, like, from my old homeboys or something, right? Mm-hmm. My mom was sending me math homework.
Math homework.
Math homework.
How about that?
She would send me articles on astronomy, geography, biology, science, stocks, investing. It would just be just this huge, diverse, books, articles, whatever of information that I could just absorb. And for 3 years, like, dude, I read everything. I read the library clean. My mom would go to my friends that were in high school and ask to borrow the biology books. She would go to a library and she would photocopy the book and mail it in. My mom drove 14 hours because I was in South Texas. 14 hours every single week to come visit me in visitation for 2 hours, right? It's because of her that I decided to change my life around.
Wow.
Because it was very easy for me to feed in with the negativity and to say, you know what, I'm gonna get down with a gang. I'm going to transport drugs, and I'm just gonna, like, this is gonna be my life. It's very easy to fall into that. And my mom, despite my lowest moments, was always kind of like that shining star that pulled me out of that. That said, I remember she would always say to me, you know who you truly are. Don't change. You're a good person. Like, she would say that to me every single time. On the phone, in visitation, in letters. She would say, don't change who you are. You're still a good person. And so that's what kept me out of this long... I had really bad points in there where... I wanted to give up, and she was my strength.
Wow, so you never got affiliated with a gang?
Nope, never got put down. They tried to put me down with Trece, Paru, Disciple, in there because I had a shaved head. It was in South Texas. It's 120 degrees outside. I was super tan. Everybody thought I was Hispanic, and so they would initially they would come up and be like, "Hey, hola, ¿cómo estás?" Like, they thought I was Hispanic at first. They always called me Chino. Yeah, like that was my name or whatever in there. They tried to put me down with the gang, but I just always remember what my mom said.
So they respected you and everything.
They respected me. So the other part of the respect, right? So initially you have to fight and all that other stuff. So the other thing that I started to realize when I got in there, and this is going to sound really weird, but just follow me with it, right? Mm-hmm. So I wasn't a dumb kid, and as soon as I took the GED testing, like, I passed. I got my GED like right away. When I went to school, dude, like, the school system at the time was, because you had so many different inmates of different age ranges and different education levels. You'd have a 20-year-old kid with a third grade reading level, or maybe doesn't even speak English. Mm-hmm. Like, some of these guys were like, in ICE for a while. ICE is immigration. So these guys were about to get deported, and for some reason they put them in a long-term. So you'd have all these different kids, right? 12-year-old, 15-year-old, all in the same classroom. And so because it was so difficult to educate these kids, they gave us crossword puzzles. And that was the school system. Wow. So you have a bunch of kids that are staying there anywhere from 9 months to 8 years inside a prison facility, and their education is a word search or a crossword puzzle. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I'm in school, and I was like the actual one of the few kids that actually opened the book, and I was actually reading it and stuff like that, right? So I was doing all that stuff, getting my high school diploma, blah, blah, blah. So on the dorms, so the place that you stay at, it's like a pod or a cell, or we call it a dorm, right? So on the dorms, on the weekends, like you have a 16-hour schedule, but there's nothing to do. And so I was reading a lot, but I said, hey, you know what? Like, I'm bored. Why? I asked the guards, hey, do you mind if I get a GED book or two, some paper, and a couple pencils? And I'm just going to do an open invite and see if anybody wants to get their GED, come meet me in the group room, and I'll teach you math, reading, whatever it is. Because I'm bored, right?
Yeah.
So, like, weirdly enough, like, we had a couple start going in, and then it started to grow and grow and grow. And what I learned about the entire experience was that you have these guys that come from these neighborhoods who their entire life were told that they weren't going to amount to anything. That their father and their father's father and their father's father's father were all in gangs, or all went to prison, or maybe the father was never even in their life, right? Mm-hmm. And all they see is drugs and gangs and poverty. And so when they go to prison, it's a rite of passage. They don't see it as, oh, I failed. They see it as, wow, I've got cred now. I've got street cred. But at the same token, these are human beings that crave accomplishment. Like, as humans, like, we want to have a purpose. We want to know that we're doing good in this world, like, innately, regardless of the actions that we commit. Like, I think that everybody has that good inside of them. So when I was teaching these kids weren't stupid. You just have to spend a little bit more time, because nobody in their lives up until that point had ever spent time to teach them anything other than sell drugs and, shoot a gun. So when these kids started to get it, started to learn the math and actually understand it and apply and blah, 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 they were so hungry to learn. They wanted to learn. They wanted to do better for themselves and their families. They didn't want to come back to prison. And because I was that teacher, like, people actually looked up to me and respected me for it. So I go back to since I've been released, I go back to facilities all the time. And this is something that when I talk inside the prison system, like, it's hard to understand. But through kindness and through giving, you can actually change lives inside the prison system, and you don't have to resort to violence in order to get respect. So that's one part. The second thing was that my mom was sending me a bunch of religious articles and all that stuff. When I got the 12-year sentence, like, I hated God. Like, at that point, I was all like, really? You gave me 12 years? I fasted for you? Like, I went hungry. Mm-hmm. I was being very selfish, right? Very short-sighted. So I get that sentence. I hate God. I go back in the prison system. I've got nothing to do. So my mom's sending me all these religious articles, and she's not trying to brainwash me. So she sends me Christian, Muslim, Catholic, the actual facts about the history. So it's not just like Bible teachings. It's like these are the facts that we know about the history of Catholicism, or just whatever it is, right?
Sure.
And so I get a very well-rounded education on religion. And
your mom's incredible, Jason.
Dude, she's the reason why I am here today.
Yeah.
Right? So outside of the GED classes, I start opening up Bible studies. Mm-hmm. And once again, it's very interesting that there's a group mentality where when you're in front of everybody else, you have to act hard, right? Because if you show weakness, especially in there, people will pounce on it. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody's opportunistic. But when you go into this group room and you're separated from your peers, like, we had these OGs, guys that killed people, singing hallelujah by the end of the service.
Wow.
Right? Like, real transformation was taking place. And that's another way I got respect, is that people saw that I honestly wanted to make a positive change in my life. Mm-hmm. People respect that.
And you were in prison for 3 years?
For 3 years on a 12-year sentence.
3 years on a 12-year sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it really was your mother that transformed you. I mean, it was someone who was so, through the kindness and through the giving, and you were able to reflect that. Dude, I got goosebumps just thinking about that, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a crazy experience. The facility that I was at was in South Texas, and because of corruption in the administration, because of abuse, there was this one time back in 2005. There was a riot that was so bad that one of the guards had picked up a kid, slammed him so hard into the concrete that he went permanently blind in one eye and left him in the hot sun, like 120-degree weather, in an ant pile for hours. So this kid not only is blind now, but has severe sunburn and had been bitten all over his body with ants, right? So there was huge, like, staff abuse that was happening at the facilities. Riots every other week, kids, like, trying to stab guards. It was crazy. The state government wanted to shut that facility down because it's so bad. Evans Regional Juvenile Center, back in 2005, 2008. They wanted to shut down the facility. I was a trustee at the time, and so they took me along with 6 other youth.
Trustee means good behavior.
Yeah, good behavior. Yeah. We had jobs and education, all that stuff, right? So they took us over to a Senate hearing in front of Senator Whitmire and his whole corrections committee, and basically, pretty much, they were kind of like using us as like show dogs. So the administration would say, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, but look at these kids. Like, they're being good, right? So initially we were there just to be show dogs. And then towards the end of it, they opened it up and they said, hey, if you would like to testify, sign up and then you can testify, right? So I turned to the guy next to me. His name was Leha. And I say, dude, I'll do it if you do it. And he goes, yeah, bet, let's do it. So I go and sign the paper and I put it in. Turns out he never signed the paper. He was never going to go up there and talk. Right? So they call my name and I go up there. And there's actually, you can still hear the recording online. So at that facility, like, the way people spoke was, know what I'm saying? Know what I'm talking about? Know what I'm saying? Like, all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so I go up there and I have a Hispanic accent. I'm Chinese. And after every sentence I go, know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I testified in front of the Senate and I told them, hey, what we need is opportunities to succeed after prison. We don't get an education. There are no job opportunities. Like, we can't learn a trade or a skill in here. Like if all we knew in our lives was shank a guard and rape a kid in a broom closet, guess what? When we get out, we're going to do the same things. Like, we need opportunities to succeed after we get out. Give us college. Give us blah, 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 right? Building trades, whatever it is. So I petitioned for all these different programs and stuff, budget cuts, all that stuff. Of course, they didn't do it, right? But the good that came from that is they transferred me to a different facility that was much closer to my mom.
Oh.
So instead of being 14 hours away, I was 4 hours away from my mom.
Wow.
Yeah. So went over there, went through the Capital Serious Violent Offender Program. It's one of the only programs in the world that take people that have committed serious crimes and put them through intensive rehabilitation to help them realize what they had done, to learn empathy, but to also make a huge change in their life. So I done that. I started working with government agencies to work on policy and procedures, on reviewing the pepper spray policy. Because, guards were basically just pepper spraying everybody, right?
Yeah.
Looking at BMP, behavior management programs. So imagine you're like a 15-year-old kid. You got into a fight. They put you in an isolation cell for 90 days, and you see like sunlight for an hour a day.
Oh my gosh.
And you're 15 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we're not, that's not right. So, yeah, I started working with all these government agencies and stuff. We rolled out the Family Bill of Rights. I started becoming an advocate for the other youth inmates that were in the facilities. And then from there, the opportunity just really blossomed.
So how did it go from 12 to 3, or is it still 12 but they let you out? How does that work?
Yeah, so whenever you go into prison system, there's a mandatory minimum, and then there's your total sentence. So that means that your mandatory minimum is doesn't matter what happens, right? You cannot get out of prison until you've served at least a minimum of 3 years. Now, if you do not behave, if you don't meet certain requirements, you can stay there for a period of 12 years. But if you do what you're supposed to do, you get out in 3. So after you do your 3 years, the rest of it is all on parole. And so I'm on parole today.
Wow. And when did you leave prison? What year?
I left June 2nd, 2008 at 10:42 a.m.
2008. So what was that like? What was the anticipation buildup of? Were you scared? Were you excited? Were you going to miss some of the friendships that you made there? I mean, tell me about that.
So we refer, like when you're in prison, you refer to life outside of prison as the free world. Okay, so I'll kind of refer it as free world from this point forward. So when I was in prison, you become institutionalized after a while. And what institutionalized means is that basically like you adopt like the prison lifestyle, the prison mentality. Like you've been in there for a long enough period of time to where it almost seems like home, right? So, I've been there for 3 years. I wouldn't say I was institutionalized, but the thing is that when I was in there, I had a job. I knew where my social standing was. I had 3 meals. I had a bed to sleep in. I knew the program. Like I had a life in there, right? And so when it got closer to my release date and for me to move out into the free world, like I was scared. Because like I felt like when I get out, everybody's going to think that I'm a good for nothing criminal.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to get a job. Like people are going to look down on me. And how am I ever going to compete with a kid who went through an accredited high school with teachers that taught them things? When I had to look through word searches and crossword puzzles for 3 years.
Yeah.
Like I was worried about being able to compete with others, whether or not I was scared, right? So there was a very real part of me that considered, hey, as I get closer to my release date, and this is actually very common, why don't I just get into a fight? They add another 6 months to my time, and I'll just stay here. Right? And that happens, like that's common. We've had a guy that was in there who was there for 9 months. He stayed there for 8 years because he didn't have a home to go to.
Wow.
Right? So that seriously went through my head. But once again, my mom, every time she went over to visitation, like she would be crying. And like I knew that I couldn't disappoint her again by staying in there.
She saw you every week?
Every single week, man. Like, dude, imagine that, dude. Driving 14 hours to see your son who had screwed up.
If that doesn't, that would change anyone, man. Just to see how one other person cares so much about someone else to sacrifice that. I mean, that's love in action, man.
My mom, like, dude, so my grandma couldn't drive, couldn't speak English. My mom bought a minivan specifically because she was still working the 12-hour night shifts. She would drive as far as she could, pull over to the side of the road, take a nap inside the minivan while my grandma, like, watched out. And then get back on the road and start driving again. Like, that's the type of person she was. I knew guys in there whose parents lived down the street and wouldn't even visit them. Very recently, I went and did a speaking engagement at a facility. This kid was getting released. And his mom didn't come and pick him up because she was running errands. So, what I'm trying to say is that, like, parents and having that support system really does have an impact. And if you don't have that, like imagine how angry that kid was when he had spent 4 years inside the prison system, was about to get released, and had to go back inside the gates because his mom was like getting groceries. Imagine how mad you are. Imagine like that kid's going to end up coming back to prison because he has nobody to live for and nobody to go home to. Right? I was fortunate enough to have somebody to go home to.
Wow.
So, I'm scared as hell, and, I'm considering whether or not I should go on the free world. I decided not to and continue going through the program and all that stuff. And a week before I get released, I meet this lady named Catherine Hoke. And Catherine was the founder of PEP, the Prison Entrepreneurship Program. That program works with guys, adults with criminal histories inside the prison system. They pair them with executives, entrepreneurs, CEOs of companies to help them start up businesses once they get released. Just kind of do a quick rundown of the stats.
Totally, yeah.
70% of people that commit a violent crime that go into the prison system and get released will be back inside the prison system within 3 years. 70%.
Holy crap.
80% of the people that get arrested are unemployed at point of arrest. Okay? So this is a generational thing. To incarcerate one person for 1 year inside the prison system as an adult Depends by state, but on average, it's about $50,000 to $60,000 a year
For one?
for one person. Okay.
Holy crap.
For a juvenile, somebody under the age of 19, because they recently changed the law from 21 to 19. So if you're under 19, you're a juvenile. To incarcerate one juvenile, it costs the state $120,000 to $150,000 a year for one individual for 1 year.
That blows my freaking mind, Jason.
Yeah. Imagine that. $120,000, right? So what Catherine did was she came up with this really innovative program to help these guys, once they get out, find a way to actually stay out, right? Like to not go back to the prison system. So the idea is this. If you're a drug dealer, let's take a drug dealer, for example, right? And you lead a gang organization who primarily receives their revenue by selling drugs, right? As that gang leader, you have accountants, you have salespeople, you have wholesaling, you have distributing. I mean, it runs like a company.
It's a business, yeah.
It's a business. It's an actual business. Think about like the largest cartels, right? Things that come to mind is like El Chapo or whatever deal is, right? Like imagine these guys are able to build a multi-billion-dollar empire selling a product that is illegal, right? Imagine like the fact that we can get a gram of weed almost anywhere in the United States for $20. Imagine the logistics that's behind that to be able to source the material, to be able to transport that, the distribution points. Like these are actual business skills, but they're all in the wrong direction, right? So when Catherine took a look at these guys, she saw talent there. Individuals that had the raw business skill sets, but just applied them in the wrong direction, which is why she paired them with really successful entrepreneurs or or executives, whoever it is, to help mentor them to start up their own businesses.
How about that?
Another thing, too, is that when you get out and you have a felony on your record, you will not be able to get a job.
Yeah.
And if you're a drug dealer that pushes $100,000 worth of cocaine on the streets on a weekly basis and you can't get a job at McDonald's, guess what? You're going back to prison.
Yeah.
When you get out, you have to find housing. But a lot of places, if you have a felony on your record, you cannot find housing. They won't house you. Okay? When you get out on parole, you have to pay parole fees, right? If you can't get a job and you have to pay parole fees, and if you don't pay the parole fees, you end up going back to prison. Like, this is all set up for you to go back to prison. Imagine if you're 30 years old, you screwed up, you get pinched for 5 years, right? You got a wife, kids, you got a job, you've got credit card bills, you've got housing, all that stuff, right? Well, guess what? Now you have debt that has accumulated during that entire time.
Gosh, you're
right?
Screwed, yeah.
Like, you haven't been able to make any payments toward it. You are out of the game for 5 years. Like, think about child support, alimony, like your credit score screwed up. Like, these guys literally come out with no ability to succeed. And that's where the magic of this program is. So I met her. She told me to be a part of her program. I get out at the age of 19. I've been working with a guy named Will Harrell while I was in the prison system. He takes me over to the state capitol. And as I walk down the hallway, every like senator and state legislators like knows my name because as we're going throughout this entire process, that testimony that I had at the Senate committee like turned me into the poster boy for like the entire organization, right? So like everybody like knew my name. I got to meet the chief of staff, Jay Kimbrough, and like everything at the time, right? Catherine gives me a call, says, "Hey, I want you to join my program." And when I get out, like I have a vast support group and foundation to really be successful after I get out. Not for my own doing, but through the people that I've met that have a heart for helping guys like me, right?
Wow.
So I get out. They pair me with a mentor. I'm still friends with him to this day. This guy is amazing. I'm 19 years old, and I need to get a job, right? And so he had a really wealthy attorney who had a client case, civil law case. Long story short, I started my first business 6 months out of prison. I was making $45 an hour.
Wow.
Building computer simulation projects that I had no idea how to do. And I just had to live and breathe it until I figured it out. From there, Catherine starts taking me all across the country doing public speaking. And so that's where, we raised a lot of money for her nonprofit, really telling my story and how, it's not the end of the road when you go in. Like, there are, like, it has to be a personal choice first. But if you decide to turn your life around, it can be done. It's just very difficult. And you have to be tenacious with it, right? After that, I get a full ride scholarship, get a double master's, working, finally network myself into a corporate job where I was making decent money. And then I quit my job to start my business. So that was the beginning of Byte Size Moments.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Where do you think we should go from here, Jason? I mean, that was an amazing conversation. It's just opened my eyes to a completely different world that I don't even know anything about. But I mean, the pathways to success is all about helping people find their own unique pathway to success. You have a very definitive pathway to success from the prison system. And that's why I know you're so passionate about this topic and bringing awareness. And that's what you're doing today, right? With Defy.
Yep.
Tell us about Defy, your role, and what the mission is.
Sure. So Defy Ventures is a program started by Catherine Hoke, so the person that I referred to earlier.
Yeah.
So her program basically, it takes people with incarcerated or people with criminal histories, and once again pairs them with executives, entrepreneurs, CEOs, like whoever it is, right? People that are very successful to help them transform their lives and become the CEO of their life, right? And these are guys that are out of prison or in prison. So she's working with guys that have life, right? Or guys that have done 5 years, got out, and are just really looking to change their lives around. The type of people that she's been able to attract as mentors for EITs. What an EIT is entrepreneur in training. These are the program participants, the people with the criminal histories. The people that she's been able to attract is amazing. We're talking about managing partners from VC companies, private equity firms, CEOs of multi-million-dollar organizations. Mark Suster, who's like a legendary investor on the West Coast, is a huge part of the program. Like he's a big proponent of the program, is on the board. You have Brad Feld, Tim Draper. We have the ex-CEO of the New York Stock Exchange.
Wow.
I mean, like she has executives from Google. The people that she's been able to attract is amazing. I think outside of that too, the opportunities that she's been able to offer the EITs, entrepreneurs and trainings that join the program have been amazing. So the results of the program are this, right? She's been doing this for over 5 years. Over 1,000 people have been served, right? Less than 2% of these guys end up going back into prison.
Less than 2%.
Less than 2%.
It's working.
It's working.
Yeah.
Not only that, but remember how we talked about an adult costs anywhere between $50,000 to $60,000 to incarcerate per year? Hers only costs $15,000 for one person.
And it saves the government and the taxpayers money.
Yeah, it saves the taxpayer. So there's a financial return. There's a social return. Because think about it, right? When somebody gets arrested on the streets, if he goes out and commits a crime, it's not, the impact doesn't stop there, right? It impacts the community. You have police officers, attorneys, courts, transportation. I mean, it's just a huge financial model that's built around incarceration. But if you can stop one person from going back to prison, the chances of his son or daughter going to prison dramatically decreases, right? The impact that he has on his community is extremely positive because they're not entering into this generational life cycle of crime, right? So the program is working. Over 400 businesses have been created. Some are multi-million-dollar businesses created by guys that may have spent 20 years inside prison.
Yeah.
A lot of them are lifestyle businesses. So that's a business where, it pays, it allows, it's a business, they're the owner, but it's also a job.
Sure.
But at least they can get a job. At least it keeps them out of prison. Within 3 months of release, 95% of them are able to find gainful employment.
Actual jobs?
Actual jobs.
Even with the record?
Even with the record. Because not only does Defy help them start businesses, but they also match them with companies that are looking to hire people with incarcerated histories, or at least are open to it. And there's a huge infrastructure and system that they have in place for that as well. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the results of the program are amazing. Wow. And the EITs, for example, we've been able to go to Harvard, to go to Stanford. We've been able to pitch at Sequoia, some of the biggest VC firms in the world. Mm-hmm. It truly does show us that there are no limitations. That if you truly decide to make a positive change in your life, you can excel. And here is a huge group of people that are willing to back and support you. And that's what these guys need.
Jason, what do we need to do to raise awareness for Defy for you? How can our listening audience support you, connect with you? What is it we need to plug?
Yeah. So the organization is defyventures.org. Mm-hmm. My email, and I'll give that to you, is jwang@defyventures.org. It's a great organization. We have events all the time. One of the jokes, but this is real, is come to prison with us. Mm-hmm. You can come into prison with us. And
so I could go?
Yeah, you can come into a prison with us. Whenever we have these events, come into prison with us and actually experience the transformation for yourself. Yeah. It is a nonprofit organization, so we run off of donations. Mm-hmm. And so, if you support this cause, if you, understand how important it is to help these guys transform their hustle and transform their lives, donate to the cause. Mm-hmm. Whether it's $5, $10, $25, $500. $500 supports one scholarship for one EIT, Entrepreneur in Training. And if you have $50,000, $50,000 actually allows you to lead a prison event and become kind of like a sponsor of that prison. So it's a worthy cause.
We'll definitely make sure to leave everything here linked up in the show notes. So Jason, give us some parting words. What is it? This has got to give you a new sense of the world that not a lot of people have, a sense of gratitude or something. What?
Well, I think that, I remember when I first got out of prison, I was very selfish.
Mm-hmm. When you first got out?
When I first got out. I had a chip on my shoulder. I felt like everybody would look down on me, and so I was very selfish. And so money was my main motivator. I wanted to get my education as fast as possible. I wanted to start up a business and get a job and do all these things in order to make money because I thought that money was the way out. And as I went through this entire process, I never forgot where I came from. And so I always went back into prisons to be able to talk to the kids and say, hey, look, it's possible. And as I've gone through life, I recently started up a business that failed, Byte Size Moments. And what I started to realize through this whole thing is that, money will always come if you're passionate about something and you have a purpose. And I think that I've found my purpose. Because there's no way that I went through all this crap in my life to have it go toward nothing. Mm-hmm. And I truly feel that by being able to help these guys that I feel very kin to, because we've had that shared experience, maybe that's my purpose. Mm-hmm. So I guess my parting words is find your purpose.
Love it. Jason, I got to say, this is probably one of the most powerful conversations I've ever had on the podcast. I think you are an incredible human being. I say that with the utmost sincerity, man. You're an amazing person. You inspire the crap out of me, man. Thank you very much for being on this podcast. So everyone, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Pathways to Success podcast. Make sure to connect with Jason, connect with Defy, support this organization. It's a great one. And please share this episode out. There was so much incredible information and inspiration that we could share and bringing awareness to this particular topic. So thanks for tuning in to another episode, and we'll connect with you again on another episode of the Pathways to Success podcast.